You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome to Let's Talk Business. My name is Kelly Bolton, and thank you for tuning in as we have the distinct pleasure of hosting our community's foremost leaders, entrepreneurs, and civic heroes. I'm very excited to introduce our next guest as we have an opportunity to discuss higher education and its tremendous impact on the academic, social, and professional growth of young adults. We're honored to have David Archer, the new president of Christian Brothers University. So join us today to share his vision for the school and the students, ranked as one of the top 20 schools in the South by U.S. News and World Report. Christian Brothers is actively engaged in enriching the lives of its students and our community. So without further ado, join me as I welcome David Archer to our show. David, thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome.
What a pleasure. And you are, from my understanding, you've been in Memphis 25 years or so.
26, yeah.
What brought you to Memphis?
So I was in the hospital world and working for Tenet Healthcare, who owns currently and has for many years St. Francis Healthcare,
right?
St. Francis Hospital. And they had asked me to come to Memphis to take over St. Francis, and it was interesting. We were in Poplar Bluff, Missouri at the time,
right, with
Tenet, and at a health system there, and we'd been there about 3 years. And it's interesting in Tenet, at least at that point in time, was an interesting company in that they knew that my wife and I had made a commitment to educate our kids in Catholic schools from K through 12.
Right.
And in a town the size of Poplar Bluff, there is no Catholic high school. And so that was part of their motivation for wanting us to come here, was that we would have, Catholic high schools to send our kids to. I don't know many companies that care enough about their employees that and would even know those things.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
that is quite interesting.
Yeah.
So the company caring about you and your family and your desire for that education brought you here. Well, I understand.
And let me just follow on just one brief thing. CBHS is why we're here. We looked at a couple of schools and they were fine, and then looked at CBHS. We have 3 boys, and then our youngest is a girl. And it just felt, and it was the feeling of CBHS was, it was a place where they can grow up and become young men, and they would have, role models in that. There was a bit of a rough and tumbleness to it. And so that's what really, ultimately the brothers convinced us to move to Memphis and to take this opportunity.
Very interesting.
And so that, that's the first I had really encountered the brothers. Even as a Catholic, I didn't grow up Catholic and had never encountered them before, and so CBHS was the beginning for us.
That's interesting. And my understanding is you spent 30 years in healthcare.
Yes.
But you also spent some time in New York and Guatemala working with the street kids of those areas.
Yes, yeah.
And then you use that to catapult into the president of a well-respected university like Christian Brothers. So tell me, how did the dots connect? And I mean, in my mind, I can see it makes a logical progression.
Okay, I even in retrospect, I can't. But,
it logically makes a progression for me, but let me hear from you.
Sure,
what happened?
Yeah, and it certainly was not a plan. What I tell our students at orientation, what I used to tell my students when I was teaching, is, this is my 4th vocation, and each of those vocations has come from hearing a call and answering that call and saying yes. And that's how I ended up in New York City, working with street kids. It was a priest that came and spoke to a class of mine at Purdue in the business school, which seems odd in and of itself. And he always made a pitch, you know, if you feel called, come and join my lay Catholic community. And I'll give you $12 a week and room and board, and you can work with my kids. And I wasn't Catholic at the time, but felt a call to do that. And so did that, went to New York, then spent time in Guatemala, where I, fortunately in Guatemala, figured out that I had learned something in business school at Purdue, and
Right.
that I was relatively good at it, at running an organization. And then back to New York, got married, had converted to the Catholic Church in Guatemala, and thought probably, you know, taking care of street kids on an emergency basis, maybe not the best way to provide for a family.
Right.
And so ended up going back to school at Columbia, and we lived up in the North Bronx, and got my MBA and Master's in Public Health with the intention of working in hospitals and in healthcare. Had a father, my father-in-law has passed, but one day he sat down with me before this and said, you know, you're a smart young guy, and all these people that run hospitals are idiots. Why don't you go do that? So I thought,
love it.
And I thought, well, I'm still helping people in need. It would
Right.
still be rewarding in that way. So that's how I ended up in healthcare. Was only interested in going into the investor-owned hospital world, thinking that, you know, they probably have the systems to do it right and to learn from. And so joined one of those companies, and then spent time in everywhere from Arkansas to Houston to Southern California, and then Poplar Bluff, Missouri, and then here. And so that's, you know, that progression. And 2016, when I would sit in prayer, I started to hear, I have something else for you to do.
And you followed the calling.
Well, but it was until you give up what you have, you won't find it. And so just retired not knowing it, and walked across Spain with my wife, and figured out that it was probably teaching at CBU. I was on the board at the time, and so came and started teaching. And then they decided to make a change in the president's role and asked me to do it on an interim basis and then on a permanent basis. So that's, again, I'm a atypical college president.
Well, it's quite a journey, and if I was thinking about the things that tie it together, it's you listening to a calling, and it seems that your calling has always been that of helping people, whether it's through the medical profession or the street kids,
Right.
or providing education.
Right.
And I want to talk about that further, but we're going to pause and take a quick break, and then
Good.
we're going to continue this discussion. So please stick around as we take a short break. We'll be right back with you.
Camera one, switch audio, cue talent.
So GHS-TV was started in 1982 by Frank Bluestein, the department's founder.
It's a multi-million-dollar television studio, and students who are a part of it have the opportunity to do real-world work.
Welcome to GHS Insider, the show.
What makes this program unique is the students here. We come with a lot of potential and a lot of talent, and we also come with the mindset of we have to do this, we can do this.
In this class, we really have the ability to be as creative as we want to be.
On the show today, we take you to the side. When you see yourself on a screen, it's a feeling where it's like, I actually contributed to something, I actually did something that matters to people.
We have fun days, like when we do shows and we do a really good show, it's that adrenaline of like, oh wow, we just did a really good show, we did it. Hey everyone, I'm Brooklyn White.
And there's a real sense of pride that comes from completing a show that you have written, produced, thought of on your own. And that sense of pride is really important, and it keeps us motivated because we want to do more. We want to experience that feeling again.
We're always pushing the kids, we're always challenging them, and they rise to the challenge.
So the program has absolutely changed a lot for me. It has given me a view into the arts and has let me see that I really do enjoy working behind a camera as well as in front of the camera.
The future of our program really, a lot of times, is up to the students. It's their willingness to see beyond what is here and what it can be. Year to year, it changes with the students, but the ability of the students never changes.
Go Red
Red Devils!
For more information about the Kappa program, visit ghskappa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Business. If you're just tuning in, I am Kelly Bolton, and today we have the distinct pleasure of talking with our guest today, David Archer. He's president of Christian Brothers University, and he's sharing with us all the exciting opportunities and programs that exist at CBU. So thank you for joining us. I want to get to these programs because I promised our guests we're going to hear about them.
Good.
But I do want to just kind of pick up where we left off about kind of you following a calling. And I want to say that I think that we as a community are so blessed to have you in this leadership role, because you obviously did not take it because of some paycheck that they offered you. It was because you felt like in your heart it was where you were supposed to be. And I think that is one of the true landmarks of a tremendous leader. It's because they're following a calling and they're doing what their heart tells them they need to do, and not just for the paycheck. So hats off to you for that. I think that's just tremendous. I want to kind of segue into these programs that Christian Brothers has, but I know people get confused because there's Christian Brothers High School and then there's Christian Brothers University.
Correct.
And I believe Christian Brothers University started maybe 151 years ago, something like that?
Both did.
Okay, so kind of what is the tie, and can you go to Christian Brothers College if you didn't go to Christian Brothers High School?
Sure. Yeah, the tie is the brothers, and the Christian Brothers were founded a little over 300 years ago in Reims, France, and by John Baptiste de La Salle. So that's why we refer to ourselves as LaSallian. And one of our universities is La Salle in Philadelphia. And so that's how we're known around the world. There are 65 universities around the world. Many more of the high schools, I'm sure, and grade schools. They both came together and we were a beneficiary of the Chicago fire, the Great Chicago Fire. There had been a desire, the Bishop, of Tennessee had been asking the brothers to come, and they didn't have enough brothers to do that until a couple of their high schools burned down in Chicago. And that's what got them to move here. And so both schools started out together. The campus that we're on was a campus for both the high school and the college until the high school moved to Walnut Grove, where it is now, and in the 80s. And so they've been together a long time. Both locations have a community of brothers that live there on the campus. And up until, I guess I'm the third layman, not a brother, of Christian Brothers University. Prior to that, it was always one of the brothers who was the president. Interesting. And you said you're founded on LaSallian principles.
Correct.
Can you tell me about the LaSallian principles? And I'll give you this.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah, it's what we call our Red Book.
Oh,
and
okay.
it was put together by one of the brothers and someone in our mission department. And it gives you both a history of the order, how it was founded in France, the history of the brothers coming to Memphis and founding the schools, and then more about the history of the schools. But those, one of the things that I would talk about on page 12, we have our 5 core LaSallian principles.
Okay.
And this guides us, it guides the high school, it guides all LaSallian institutions. And they're probably, not surprising necessarily in terms of the Christian Brothers, nor in terms of what a college would talk about, but faith in the presence of God, respect for all people, quality education, inclusive community, and concern for the poor and social justice. And I'll touch on, two of those, concern for the poor and social justice and quality education, have a lot to do with CBU. And every university says we'll have a quality education. For us, what that means is when LaSalle started his schools in France, it was really due to innovation. They were the first schools to teach in the vernacular rather than Latin, so teach in French. They were the first schools to actually train their teachers and educate them. And teachers in that day were largely, many uneducated. They couldn't get a job doing anything else, and so they became teachers. And the first to teach simultaneously in a classroom. So even in a classroom, if a school had one, students were taught one at a time, like 5 minutes apiece. And so those innovations, through that, the schools, which were founded for the poor, the quality was so high that the wealthy started putting their kids in those schools. And so concern for the poor is the other one to touch on. Is, you know, at CBU, the impact we've had over these 150 years of raising kids out of poverty has been tremendous. Significant percentage of our students are what we call Pell Grant eligible. They're coming from poorer families, challenging situations. And then 20% of our students are dreamers. And so those children that were brought to the United States by their parents when they were 2, 3, 4, 5, and are undocumented, don't have a documented status. And so that and quality education are two critically important things for us. And it's that balance that makes us sustainable, that we are able to raise a tremendous number of kids out of poverty through that education, and to not just educate them, but help them to grow and transform into individuals that can make a difference in this world. You know, we talk about of late, you know, if there was ever a time that Memphis needed the brothers in CBU, it's now, given all the challenges that we have. And so we raise young men and young women to go out and face those challenges and change the world, change Memphis.
Well, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
We're gonna take a break, and I want to continue on that, and then I want to use our last segment to just really touch on the programs. So thank you.
Sure.
We're going to cut for a short commercial break. Don't go away as we learn more about Christian Brothers University's mission and vision.
I think that the visual arts really help students to develop a new vocabulary.
There's a lot of different ways that you can do art, so it's just multimedia way of communicating, expressing yourself to other people.
At Germantown High School, we offer our introductory classes, which would be our Art 1 classes, Art 1 Honors, and then you would move up into Art 2, Art 2 Honors, and you can go towards the IB path, which would be what I teach, the International Baccalaureate Art classes, and we also have AP Art classes.
That's when you start being able to practice your skills on your own, so the skills that you learned freshman year, you get to start to kind of put them into practice and have a little bit more creative freedom.
At Germantown, we have, of course, all of the basic media, drawing, painting, all of that. But we can do a lot of printmaking. I do some fiber arts in my class, so we do, you know, fiber design, fabric dyeing. We also have some sculptural media and processes that we explore through found object sculptures, some clay.
Even though I'm only a senior in high school, I feel like I'm a very sophisticated artist and ready to, you know, further that.
At some point in school, you're gonna have something that's gonna have to do with art. You're gonna have to make a poster, this, that, and the third, and you're gonna have these skills because you've taken this art class. You're gonna have new relationships with teachers that you might need later. Like, it's just a big learning experience.
For more information about the Kappa program, visit ghskappa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Business. So glad you could join us today as we've had the pleasure of speaking with David Archer, president of Christian Brothers University, to discuss all the exciting things and developments happening at Christian Brothers. David, thank you so much. Unfortunately, this is our last segment, but I did want to touch, we were talking during the commercial break, and I want our audience, and I want them to hear it from you, that they do not have to be Catholic to go to Christian Brothers. You're not going to try to make them become Catholic, and when they look online and see that your tuition is X dollars a year, that doesn't mean they have to pay that.
Correct.
So can you expand on that just a little bit? Yeah. Because I know so many of these students that are filming us today are phenomenal students, and they may not be Catholic, or they may not feel like they can afford the tuition, and I'd love for them to hear about the opportunities there, and then I want you to tell us about the programs.
Sure. So no, I mean, roughly 25 to 30% of our students in any year are Catholic. Now that's, you know, a good percentage compared to the population of Memphis, where Catholics are about 4% of the population here. But about 25 to 30, the majority are non-Catholic, and they're of different faiths, of no faith. And you know, Catholics, we're not very good at evangelizing. So, you know, we don't probably convert a lot of students. Some do find, you know, become attracted to the faith. They may stumble into Mass that happens daily or something like that, but the majority, you know, remain in the faith. And that's our role, really, is to make them better Christians, Muslims, Jews, you know, to help them expand and grow in their own faith.
That's wonderful. And be better human beings, and give them a chance to better their lives. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And I forgot your
the
second
tuition.
point.
Talk about
tuition is,
because it's scary. You look at the tuition and you think, I can never pay that.
Right. Yeah. And it's, I liken it to hospital bills. If you get your hospital bill and you find that ultimately the insurance company and you pay 20% of what that bill was. So students have access to federal grants, Pell Grants, HOPE from the state, different state programs, and then aid from the school. And some of that comes in the way of merit. You know, up to, our merit program runs up to $19,000 a year.
Wow,
scholarship.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. And so the average net revenue per student, let's say, is in the neighborhood of $17,000. Now, that includes federal grants, state grants, those things. And so our students ultimately leave with roughly the same level of loans, or the same loan amounts that they graduate from U of M with.
Okay.
And so very much on par, price-wise is very much on par. That's a challenge as a private university without, you know, state aid in that regard, but, you know, we pay attention to our costs, and because, again, LaSalle set out to provide an education to the poor kids that he saw in the streets of Reims, where they had no opportunity. So,
well, that's wonderful, because you do have a tendency to think it's a private school. You look at tuition, think I can't do it. So if someone has an interest in the school, they can reach out, and
they can reach out. There's a price. You know, every school has a net price calculator. Ours is very effective. There's a federal one, and then there's the one that we utilize. They can calculate based on you know, parents' income and all of those things, what their net price will be per year.
And then tell me about the programs and the developments. What are the things that would attract a student to want to come to Christian Brothers right now?
Sure. You know, we're unusual in a small university to have a School of Engineering. And that's long been probably one of the things that we're most known for, is our School of Engineering. And so we have engineering, we have all of the sciences, our biology program tends to be one of our larger programs. A lot of students going on to medical school, dental school, and different medical professions. The business school, especially, you know, we're again maybe a little unusual in having accounting as a major given our size. And so very strong programs in the business school. And then we have the traditional liberal arts programs, and in the School of Arts, one of the strongest there is psychology. Tremendous program that does a lot of student research, and we're just starting a master's in counseling program for, for those psych students to be able to go on into and follow that. So, a typical, breadth of programs. The others, graduate school has become a much bigger, part of what we do. This year we have 650 graduate students, which is pretty good size for us. A lot of those are in graduate engineering programs, computer science, data science, MBA programs, in physician assistant programs, and so a broad range there. But that's typically, we haven't had a tremendous number of grad students, so we're anxious to see that grow.
That's wonderful. One of my favorite all-time people that I've ever worked with was a graduate from Christian Brothers, and she now got her graduate degree, and now she's working at Smith & Nephew here in town, and has been very successful and very well respected, and she attributes it to Christian Brothers. They've told me we've just got about a minute left, so anything else you want to share with our audience, with the students that are filming us, about the university?
Sure. I mean, what drives me every day, what gets me to come to work, and what really drove me as a professor is the amazing students that we have. Many of them from challenging backgrounds and have come through that as good, decent kids, good, decent human beings that are going to go out and truly change Memphis and transform Memphis. And so that's what we're
that's wonderful. I'll tell you, in the world we live in today, we need more people like you and like this university that are investing in our children, because they are our future. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Once again, I'd like to thank David Archer. He's president of Christian Brothers University, for being with us today and sharing his vision for this prestigious educational institution. To learn more about CBU, check out their website at cbu.edu. You can get more information on our show as well by checking us out on the web at GHS-TV.org, where we're streaming live 24 hours a day. You can also check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I hope you've enjoyed our discussion, and I hope you will join us again next month on Let's Talk Business.